Hello. Audio coming through okay? Normal? I hope. Okay. Looks like I'm good. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Schizoid Takes Tuesday, where I just talk about my take on something. Sometimes it's Zoid related, often it's not. Yeah. I'm going to have a question for this Saturday, though. I already have one in mind that I think could be interesting. But what's been on my mind a bit, as far as the Zoid stuff goes, is thinking about how often, like for a lot of schizoids, sort of misanthropic attitudes can hijack some of our perspective on things outside of what people produce or negatively produce socially. And I think often it makes us forget the various things that you likely appreciate to some degree that people produce, create. Often I thought that maybe, well, this is my experience. Right? I can only speak for myself in most regards. Let me jump on here just in case anybody wants to talk or whatever. I'm going to jump on to talk. There we go. Okay. So, I always loved stories. I always loved books and comics and things like that. Always. It's always been a thing. And that's the one thing I didn't lose, that I possessed a appreciation for even when I was very, very young. And as the alienation and everything increased, as I became more and more disconnected from my emotionality and my connection to others, if any was ever established to begin with, that actually, I doubt if many had, I would have, it would have gotten as bad as it did. And then eventually, that kind of disconnect turned into like an act of misanthropy, right? Just a hatred of other people, hatred of being human, of other humans, of my own humanity, having to be associated with this species that I found to be often confusing and barbaric. But it was a silly, young, naive way of looking at things. But one thing I didn't let go of, one thing it never left me, regardless of how much I felt so distant from them all, was my love of stories. My love of stories and media that tell stories. Be it, like I said, video games, anime, TV shows, film, books, doesn't matter. The art of the story has always been something that just in some way or another has been actively entertaining me and guiding me in many ways, right? Often I thought, I was thinking, oh, well, I'm creating like my own internal mechanisms and ethical systems and things like that. I started more actively doing such things in my 20s, reading more philosophy and things like that. And I thought that's where I was getting it all from. Right? I thought, well, what I'm making is based on this and then. I thought I was using so much reason to in how I approached creating my own kind of internal system of ethics. And I forgot how much of that system was a form of, I wouldn't go so far as to say like a confirmation bias, but a lot of my system had already been constructed to some degree. I just didn't really have the wordage for it. But it was built by stories. It was built by tales. And that's mainly... Oh, my daughter's here as usual. 1 second.
Good night.
Good night. She's 5 and she loves stories as well. Anyway, I was using my connection to story-driven media and stuff as a means to connect to my species, to the people that I was supposed to be taking part in, and wasn't many times. And it also helped build a lot of the foundations, the things that I grew around, the things that I decided I wanted to spend more time consuming, story-wise and character-wise, is what helped me go in the directions that I did. And it all required people. The people that I later thought I hated. The people that I later thought I never needed. Not realizing that I've been communicating with people on an emotional level via these unconventional channels. It was the only channels that I had. My appreciation of a well-woven tale was made by someone. The emotions and thoughts and feelings, the world building, everything else, came from the experiences, interests, opinions, and various other subjective matters of a person or people. I needed people. Though it would never have registered that way. Man, it's only in recent years that I can even look back on so much for that and realize how much of a contradiction I existed within. I wanted nothing to do with people. Here I was, spending hours upon hours, enjoying sometimes, distracting myself with, fantasizing, and so on. Creating that internal world. And I could say, well, it was constructed of all these, different subjects that I found interesting. But ultimately, my internal world was made of people. And that's something that I think a lot of schizoids don't contemplate much. And I think it's important that they do it. Because to not do so, I don't know, it feels like some kind of intentional, cognitive dissonance. So the music's getting too loud. I'm trying to adjust it here. There we go.
You mean these
Go ahead.
fantasies like your imagination would have people, right?
Well, no, they would have people, but I needed people to have constructed that imagination. I needed the creations of
Oh,
others
okay. Yeah.
to construct the very internal world that I had used to seek refuge from people.
Because what I find is a bit ironic in myself is that for a very long time, most of the like dreams I've had, or outwardly just curiosity and fantasies involve no people, but the inspiration for those mindscapes were by
People.
the designs of people, right? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Whether that be from a video game, a book, or you know, just a straight comment,
Hmm. People created your
movies.
internal
Yeah.
world.
I often felt like one of the one of the points going in favor of humanity I've always had was the fact that these stories were made by people.
Hmm.
So that's what helped me not, how do I put this? It's what helped me hang on to some sort of, I want this to someday change, and this is a kind of hope that I can cling on to.
Yeah.
It's like proof, right? Like if I had met these people and they have told me this when I was younger, things would have been a little different. Not to say that I would rather have them over my other or my parents because they're not perfect people either,
Mm.
but that's beyond the scope of the conversation.
Yeah. I just think further about like how little I would have. And it's weird to say, but how little I would have if um if it weren't for people. Which is it's hard to, that's probably something pretty hard to swallow for some Zoids. I don't know, to
I don't
think
think I
about.
would be here talking with you if I didn't have the artwork and creations of other people I've never met.
Yeah. That's a yeah, even people that like use escapism to get away from people are still using people to get away from people. It's just in a more abstract sense, right? Um, but and another thing too is I guess I don't know if you would count this as any kind of evidence towards something, but it means something to me, you know, that I contemplate it further. Is that I've always, even though to a much lesser degree than my social animal brain required to probably not develop a lot of these issues. Um, I was always connected to people because I was connected to what people created emotionally. I mean, if you're emotionally connected to your internal world, even if you don't share that with anyone, you're still connecting to people.
It took me a long while to figure that one out.
Yeah. Now that's
Not through any sort of rejection. I think for me it was just a matter of ignorance. Because as these stories were still made by people, it's not like you really saw the person behind the artwork, so to speak. And for someone like me who struggled to see between the lines, all I saw was the art, which was
mm-hmm.
very often empty. But even then, I knew something, right? Like there was something within that spirit of the artwork.
Yeah, the old human spirit, right?
So
Uh,
despite it being an empty void, it still had a spark of connection somewhere to be found and followed.
Mm. Like, yeah, it's what's really weird is that even like I was the type that like would like just always be consuming something that had stories and characters and narratives, and often those things had all kinds of feelings and emotions and decision making that, you know, I would have found bad or good and whatever. It doesn't matter. But I would rarely know much or anything about the authors. Right? I didn't care. I didn't care. I read when I was younger. I read a ton of Stephen King books. I didn't know anything about Stephen King. I think
How old when you were you when you realized that the authors were also human, and not just that they were human, but they had ideas, lives, experiences, and that you actually could correlate them? Because
probably
it took me a long time.
no. That was probably like my 20s as well.
Yeah, right. So that took me a long time too.
Like I was just so engrossed. I was so invested in the stories, the lore, whatever. I just it almost became like stories. They were like disembodied, you know, from the people who created them. And what's amusing, I think, is that as disconnected as I felt on a local level to people, or even to this associating or even caring about getting information about that author that is, you know, writing all these things that I'm enjoying uh, back then, was that I was actually getting, oftentimes, considering recent news, I can't claim this completely, but, and I'm not going to get into it at the moment, but oftentimes I was connecting to whatever emotions, thoughts, desires, um, shame, the author or creators of some of these things might have been sort of by proxy placing into characters and into the stories they were making. And yeah, it's funny. Like it's funny that like if you get really invested into like a series of books or something, you're not just getting invested in a story. You're getting invested in a creation. And the creation is made up of its creator. So you're getting invested in a person. You just don't associate it to a person. Facts, and I like the idea that writers are not creators, but conduits of stories way into existence. Yeah, a shared experience, right? A shared.
The stories they made were inspired by those before them as well.
Exactly. And
So it's been really interesting to see as I've gotten older these patterns that extend far beyond the authors that I know of
mm-hmm.
into stories of people hundreds of years gone by now.
Yeah.
But still the same, there's similar patterns, not just the patterns, but sometimes direct inspiration, and I can understand why the person thought this way. And it's a generational sort of connection, which is one of the first forms of connection I was able to handle.
Well, I think the only author that the first author that I ever started actually wanting to learn about them was H.P. Lovecraft. And it was like by accident. Sort of. not really. Well, it was because of the story. He had written a story. I'm terrible with names. Some of you may know it's a less popular one, but he had written a story about essentially. It almost sounded like an autobiographical tale about his experiences, or the experiences of a boy in the story, a young man, and his kind of this weird thing about wanting to enter these these catacombs, right? This crypt, this locked away thing, right? That there's something inside that's calling to him, and he can't get in, and he doesn't know how to, and all this sort of stuff. This kind of interesting little story, and it's just talking about his experiences, his kind of disconnect from this, and his like strange thinking, and whatever, like feeling just like out of place in the world and everything else, along with seeing he was just like experiencing and seeing things that shouldn't be there, or they were scaring him but also enticing him or something. It's I can't remember the name, but I read that one years and years ago. I think I was like probably like, I don't know, 21 21, and maybe 22, but I read it and I was like, wait, like this sounds like I related to some of the experiences or the way this character was talking about certain things. And I was like, and before I would just be reading Lovecraft stories because I just really liked, all the stuff surrounding it. And I was like, wow, he really, whoever wrote, like the guy who wrote this, Lovecraft, he really, like, it sounds like he's talking about something they experienced, like, and some parts of it just like kind of hit home. And so I'm like, oh, I wonder what he was like. And then I started like looking into it, started reading his letters, his correspondence. Luckily, there was a library at the time that had like all of it. So I was reading a bunch of the correspondence between himself and all the other people in his life. And I was reading, other stuff about him, more like biographical books, because he never wrote an autobiography, but his letters really tell you a lot about it. And he was a weirdo. And so I related. And as I got older, I started like realizing how much of himself was in these stories. Now, the only thing obviously on the internet and whatever people like to focus on nowadays is that, he had a cat named N-word, and he was xenophobic and all that sort of stuff, which all of it was true. He's very much xenophobic. I think he was less racist than he was xenophobic. I think he was very xenophobic. But I think the reason he was xenophobic was because of everything he endured as a child. I think he's similar to a lot of schizoids in the sense that he was very terrified, very sensitive, in my belief, I'm just armchairing, neurodivergent kid. And he used things like xenophobia, tradition, cultural like conservatism or purity, and anything that kind of went outside of his like New England experiences. Like it would like he needed them for stability. He needed them to keep his shit together. Because he was terrified. It almost felt like he was always terrified of those parts of him that didn't align, that were not acceptable, that were too idiosyncratic, that he couldn't, make sense of why he was like this in a world that just wasn't suited for him. And so he clung on to things like, he was one of those rationalists and of his time, science, and he was very like anti anything superstitious or whatever. But what's really interesting is that he was nothing like that when he was young. when he was young, he was flights of fancy and weird beliefs and um, a lot of things that scared him. And it would make sense that he would cling on to stuff like this. At an almost kind of similar to Houdini later, an almost kind of militant way. Like he was just disgusted by superstition and stuff like that. And it's just funny because like I don't know, like it reminds me of the way like a Zoid would approach things like how a sensitive child could develop the aloofness, the discarding of, unclean emotion, and stuff like that, that a kid with that much going on and that much fear, would do to cope with it all. Another thing I like to think about when it comes to his stories, all the Cthulhu and all the cosmic beings and all that sort of shit, it almost always felt like he had like these fears as a child that felt very real, that were just driving him bonkers and just killing him, that he had to create. He had to turn all these strange fears into fiction. It always had like a tinge of like, I have to write these stories to verify to myself that this is all fiction. And not that he actually believed in anything like Cthulhu or whatever, but I think one of Lovecraft's greatest fears and how he coped with it is by writing about it, and that was he was just being racked by existential terror. Does my life have any meaning? Does any of this have meaning? Do the people around me have meaning? He was never a people person. It's what ultimately led to, his divorce, when he did manage to find one person that could tolerate him. And he just couldn't do it. He couldn't live outside of having an isolated life. The man lived in fear. And it's just, obviously the irony of like he's considered one of the greatest, creators of fictional fear to have ever lived. Yet he was just crippled by it. This is the same reason why comedians tend to have the saddest lives. Oftentimes. But yeah, anyway. So, I guess what I'm inviting some of you guys that are Zoids, that either hate people or feel nothing about people or just indifferent to people or wish they could just never have any people ever around them, and they just want to live out in a cabin and they fantasize about just being away from society and everything and leaving it all behind and never seeing another person again or something like that, or to some degree, like some variation of that, maybe not that extreme, but just think, will you be taking books with you? Will you be taking anything with you? Right? Would you still want access to the internet? And even still, were you to go on your own in a cabin, disconnected from everything, like the internet and everything else, even if you had just your own thoughts, many of those thoughts were constructed by the emotions of others. You will always have people with you, or you were partially constructed of them, even if by these means that aren't enough for the average human, and I don't think they're enough for most Zoids. Can't speak for all, because some part of our brain still requires actual people in our lives, even if we are disgusted, averse, saddened, disappointed in ourselves for needing or wanting. We'll paint that part of ourselves as a weakness if it's there, as a glitch in our system, a vestigial thing that needs to be forgotten, removed, excised. Faxon sounds like he did a full 180 to try to keep his shit together. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, but people just don't look into it that deeply, I don't think. They're just, and maybe it's because people don't have the experiences of relating or experiencing something that would make you do that kind of a 180. What friends he did have, he only essentially he only spoke to them like the way the Zoids would on the server kind of talk to each other, in the sense that like it was just through text, or a lot through text, because he was just mailing. It was just he had a more of a social life via a correspondence than he ever did in person. Yeah, that's what I mean. But you'll always have people, Melee, because somebody's making those limitless snacks. The video games have all the feelings and emotion of all these people that you never wish to meet. Yet you are meeting them. You are meeting them through the medium in which they place themselves. I think this idea is probably something that I should think about more on, and I would like to discuss with a professional to see how an idea such as this, that I'm kind of just, you know, waxing philosophical regarding, could be used for therapeutic purposes. I think that would be a interesting step, is using that.
Trying to repurpose your meandering about in a like more therapeutic manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like this idea of you always were, to some degree, connected to others.
I think it depends, because the biggest hangup I have in hearing this conversation is the people that would innately try to reject this, right?
Mm-hmm.
To say that this is true is true. Not only that, but I agree with it. But it's really imperative to address why people reject it in the first place.
Oh, Shadow's voice is very low. Sorry. I turned them up now, I think. Say that last line you said. Sorry.
I think it's imperative to have the discussion of why people reject it in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise, when you tell them you are human,
Mm-hmm.
you are essentially telling them the thing that they either fear or hate or
Mm-hmm.
both
Mm-hmm.
the most.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
Like,
but that's
one of the most unbearable truths
yeah.
a schizoid
Well,
can ever even hear.
of
You're
course.
human.
Yeah, no, but nonetheless, like, I mean, that's the whole right. I mean, I guess that would be a form of a sort of exposure therapy, is being like, is using is using a lot of the sort of logic and reason that a Zoid will often, not always, kind of use to shield themselves from those types of thoughts or those types of experiences. Well, you are human, Melee, so.
I think the logical arguments and defenses are really a sign of emotional defenses, despite not outwardly being obvious. So using a logical argument against those arguments doesn't treat the source. It just makes the source fight
No,
harder.
no, but that would be like the baby steps, I guess. I don't know. I'm not trying to construct it right here and now. I'm
Yeah, well, I'm ready to do
yeah, well, we
it.
don't have
I
um
can do that right now.
whatever. Stop huffing your own farts. Anyway.
That's not what I meant. I meant I'm willing to engage in that conversation
Oh,
because of
well.
the conversations I've had with many a Zoid on the server
Mhm.
and plus of just my own thoughts.
Mhm.
I feel like I have at least somewhat of a grasp, if not the complete grasp, of trying to tackle the emotional severity in the ones that are traumatized. And I
Yeah.
say that lightly only because there's still plenty of the disorder I am not willing to make a confident claim of.
Mhm.
That still kind of confuses me.
Mhm.
But for those that relate to the traumatic or the socially traumatic upbringing, whether it was very overt neglect or very subverted,
Mhm.
this world does not make sense to me.
Does not compute, you know.
I can do that. If you have something else, I would love to hear it, first of all. But second of all, I would need to talk to you to understand how to go about that.
Well, maybe I don't have that answer yet. So I wouldn't even be able to give you one unless I thought about it further. Like how do you get this notion that I've found incredibly beneficial as far as being able to establish some of my connections as like shoddily built up as they often were in like my early 30s.
I think you're on the right track. I think what needs to be done is convincing the schizoid that being human,
Is not a
at the
shameful
very
thing.
least,
It's not a
isn't so bad. And not as in settle for it's not as bad. I mean, at least settle for neutral. Like, you can be human and it can be at least not bad.
yeah.
That's the first step.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that well, I mean, the way I establish that in myself is that um I have to really take in the 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 full picture, the completeness of what it is to become a person, right? Not just be a
Yes.
human, but to become a person. Um, I think there needs to be a sort of disconnect between what a person is and what people currently are and what they could be, um, and take all that sort of into consideration, right? So, like, a lot of what a schizoid would dislike about participating in society, it isn't some kind of all of it isn't just like some kind of how do I put it? Like
Kind
some
of delusion.
no, it's like some of the worst parts that humanity has to offer right now um have been partially constructed by the environment that they inhabit, right? Um and so I'm trying to explain this. This is really hard.
I can kind of understand what you mean. from the opposite end, in that I have this perception that in leading by example or encouraging people the space to act in a way that is the best of humanity, I see a lot of people take that chance. When they see that there is someone or something that can be proof to them, or that is like when they see a chance to be good, a lot of people take that chance. Not all, I don't even know if it's many, but at least some. And I would argue a lot. I would argue the average individual would choose to be good. But then, if they could also choose to be selfish and get away with it, they probably also would do that. But on that extreme scale, it's not really going to tip into virtuous or just complete psychopath. They're probably going to be within like a median zone.
Yeah, the golden mean,
Most people are, because
Aristotelian virtue ethic thing.
that's the definition of an average, you know?
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. So one has to look at human beings as an average when one is making a judgment of their own species. But
That's a good comment to make. Yeah.
but what's interesting is I feel like that pendulum, what the average is, can be moved in one direction or the other.
In the same way that a schizoid can be trained to be a schizoid because of social trauma and upbringing.
No, I don't think that's what I meant. I'm not sure. No, I'm talking about how, like, you said that most people are not like entirely virtuous, and most people are not entirely like selfish, hedonistic monsters. Well, that average I feel can be pushed in one of those directions or the other, depending on conditions.
And I was referring to the objectivity of how the reason why that would be true is because of how just like the schizoid condition itself has been artificially created by social condition.
Oh,
So
because
if
it's
you just have that on a
I see
mass
what you're saying.
scale
Yeah,
in the right way, then yes, you would logically have a correct statement.
yeah, because like, for example, well, like in my mind, I think that human beings have the potentiality to become, on average, good. We're just not in those conditions, and we did not have those. We don't have what is required, and probably never have had what is required for the pendulum to swing more in that direction in any kind of very significant way. I don't.
Wait, you know what that means to have that pendulum swing to set in motion the things that would enact that change?
Mm,
It would take engagement.
yeah.
It would take people that actually want something, that
No.
desire for change.
And that's what's kind of that's another interesting point.
Rock in a hard place.
No, yeah, but it's just I think that's part of my frustration. My kind of I have like this kind of like um frustration. I don't know how to describe it, like, but it's like a back and forth. Like I get frustrated, but then I'm like, I know I'm wrong for being frustrated because of all the context. But it's part of why I get frustrated with my demographic of people that listen to me. Um, because of kind of what you just said. Like there's this, they have to engage, right? And from so many schizoids that I've met, they oftentimes have pretty solid ethical and moral systems. They oftentimes have pretty reasonable kind of positions on stuff. They aren't bogged down by a lot of tribalism generally. Um, they aren't bogged down by like upholding most like a lot of status quo stuff. that isn't working, um, in various ways. But all of them are like just not all of them, but most of them, the majority of them are just disengaged. And maybe that's just me being idealistic, but you have a portion, as small as it may be, you have a portion of humanity that is disengaged, that has the right approach to some of this stuff because of the ever expanded metacognitive capacity that they had to develop just to kind of function in the world as a neurodivergent person. So it's like there's so many neurodivergent people that are disengaged, and I'm not just talking about schizoids, but for different reasons and in different ways. Um, because of fear, because of discomfort, because of all sorts of things, disconnect, dissociation, and so on and so forth. Right? There's so much that disengagement, disengaging from the things that hurt and engaging in only the things that don't hurt, um, seems to be like the often chosen path. And
In the schizoid's case, it seems like a losing battle because that list grows ever smaller the less you engage.
yeah, but I don't believe in losing battles. I believe in winning them. No, I'm kidding. But
Right, but just if
yeah,
you
I know.
change your perspective, then
Yeah,
you would. That's my point.
yeah. And so no, so I just think I have this like frustration because like I'll meet Zoids, and some I meet only for a little bit. Some I just read some stuff they say. Others I've had a chance to talk to one more and longer. And but so many of them are just disengaged, and I just see so much that they could contribute. And I see some of the best qualities that a human being can possess, and all of it is just sitting there stagnating.
The
And
irony is they're often told that, and even convinced that the opposite is true. Just one of many various aspects that makes them want to disengage.
it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing for me to like parse out in my head. Like I don't know how to make sense of it, I guess. Like I don't know how to like deal with that. Like I don't know what to do. It's like seeing like it's like seeing all these beautiful things on fire, and all you have is a bucket of water. That's how it feels
What
for
if
me.
what if you still trying to put out these fires with only a bucket of water
With my spit at this point.
was invigorating to the right people that had their own buckets of water,
Yeah, well, that's
right?
why I do what I do. That's what I'm
Yeah,
hoping.
so
But it doesn't
that's
really.
kind of how I am.
But I just see a bunch of the people. I just see a bunch of people holding buckets full of water and saying there's nothing in them. It's very it's a it's a difficult thing to be able to see and witness and care for. And not having the answers as to how one could make them see what they're in possession of, help them see what they're in possession of. Because if there's one
Well,
thing, is
you
always
could
don't run
tackle
out
that.
of is reasons for why they, like you said, for why they shouldn't.
There's a lot of things that you could tackle there that if you really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of all of this, you would start have to, in my opinion, from my perspective, because I just am an bottom up thinker, addressing a lot of pieces of the puzzle makes a big difference, as in they are more than the sum of their parts in the amount of
I know.
progress that they would create.
Of course.
For example, if I were to only combat the problem of overactive empathy, which is sometimes the case in the schizoid, that is
You mean overactive, like
not.
cognitive empathy, or what are you talking about?
It depends. There's one particular pattern I've noticed where there's overactive empathy in children, and then they perceive it as, or they externalize it and perceive it as a sadistic perception. So they pathologize themselves, like they pathologize their own empathy, and
That's what
that's
you mean.
what,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, that's the root of their dissociation. And oftentimes they forget that that's the root because it's been so long, or they've just been that thorough. So addressing that, one, isn't the case for every schizoid, and
Mm,
two, neglects a lot of the other pieces that weigh them down. So solving one puzzle doesn't
yeah.
lift up the other ones. So generally you'll have someone that's kind of held back.
Yeah.
But on that, I think if you had kind of what you were talking about earlier, a holistic perspective, and did a little bit of every piece, not just autistically focusing on one and then solving it and moving on. If you had every piece slowly building up,
And
the sum of those pieces would bring about more progress than any individual one could do on its own.
yeah, but what I was kind of popped in my head when you were saying that is the individual pieces could still be worked on, but those would be the pieces chosen by the individual who is being helped be set in place to realize that those pieces even exist, right? Because then it would be up to them. Like if you were talking therapeutically, it would be like helping them realize these pieces are there, and they're real, and they need to be engaged with, and then at that point, the the more like the micro stuff that needs to be worked on would have to be in part, if not mostly, the decision of the Zoid that can now see these things, and then they have to go where does it hurt most, and that that hurts most, I think, and then that's what you engage with, and it'll be a different thing for a lot of different Zoids for different reasons, but
It's interesting that the way you phrase that is extremely similar to that of the massage therapy I'm studying at the moment. Where does it hurt the most? And that's the emphasis.
mm-hmm. The problem is, I think for a lot of Zoids is they can't even recognize where where the hurt is. If that they can't even recognize that there is hurt. That's like actually molding and shaping so much. And if they do recognize there is hurt, oftentimes they don't know where it's coming from, or they
Well,
see it as it's some kind of defect in themselves to even have it, to even care enough to
I'm
have
glad that you
hurt.
brought that up. I'm glad that you brought that up because you know what you just did?
Mm-hmm.
You just told me the next problem that you bring to the table.
Yeah.
So then, would you, or not would you, but were you to have a schizoid that in your position did the same exact thing, you would be, okay, then let's do this one now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then engage, start the process.
Yeah. And I
So it's good that you would even say, this is what I'm struggling with. That is part of the process.
my biggest regret is still not getting a degree in psychology. God, stupid credibility requirements. Imagine.
Personally,
That'd be
I
so
I hope
cool. Just so
I'm
I could
doing
actually
this.
like I could be, would listen. But anyway,
I'm studying a form of massage therapy, not only because of my natural inclination towards it, but also because I want to one day try to combat more physical dissociation problems in schizoids that help reveal some of these problems that you just said
mm,
of how it's difficult for them to feel certain things. And I think it's already just on my third week, it's showing immense promise in that regard. So I think by example, that were you to have a problem and then finally engage with it,
mm,
were you to want to engage with things, then
mm.
you would eventually find the answers you're looking for.
And then maybe you could eventually engage with people, even if you're doing it in kind of like workaround ways at first, sort of navigating that maze. Yeah.
So if you can slingshot all of these other things that come up when I present to you something, then that's great because then we can tackle all those other ones like dominoes. That's good that you can bring up all these other things.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been like I was having a convo about this too, but one of the most like potent uh things that like collaborations that can occur, in my opinion, are a self-aware self-aware practicing like what's it called, disciplined self-aware um schizo and autist um people making things like those that can actually like the schizos and autists that can actually step away from their intuitive world, that willingly put themselves in places of discomfort or places that are like foreign to them, um, and realize that like they need to discipline themselves to be able to manage to do anything uh, reasonable in this world. Um, you get those two types of people on those sort of polarized, not really polarized, but those sides. You that's when cool shit can happen.
Well, it's funny you say that because we got a bunch of those in this community on both sides.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to be like that. So it's just yeah, yeah.
I think it's good to remember
Hmm.
that in even bringing up some of the difficulties, that is the process
Yeah.
to engage. So if one can even tell you, no, I'm being assaulted by all this other stuff, this is all the shit I'm dealing with,
Hmm.
thank you. You're engaging. That's good.
Yeah.
Keep going. Keep
Yeah.
doing it. You're
Yeah.
doing a good job.
Yeah. But then
Right?
good job. Like
Keep
right,
going.
right. Engaging, helping schizoids engage with the the thought of engaging. and it not being the thought of engaging and not automatically assuming the worst results or the worst outcomes.
Sometimes they do engage. There's oftentimes where I see one of them engage because they do feel they do have a more. I know it's touted that cognitive empathy is touted as the most applicable thing here, but I think there's still a lot of examples where effective empathy is the reason why someone starts to engage.
Mm-hmm.
And
That
then,
they just wouldn't likely admit it if they're schizoid, or either admit it or they would admit it and feel some kind of like shame or discomfort from it. I would think
or maybe ignorance until they're shown that that's what it is, and then they would
the
likely do the
denial of
things
it.
that you would say.
Yeah, like like when it.
But
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
they generally do that for the most prime example I've seen this happen is when they feel that someone else is being imposed upon. They feel a sort of empathetic justice or moral
Mm-hmm.
obligation to almost prevent something that they unconsciously understand happened to them in a sort of the best kind of
Mm-hmm.
projection being one from
Yeah, the what's interesting is I think I can I'm vibing what you're saying here because I have noticed that there is among the schizoids I've engaged with and seen engaging with topics and things, they seem to have a particularly potent distaste for seeing others lose their autonomy. Um, in ways that even they might not directly relate to, right? But they just don't like seeing other, sometimes even just living things lose some that freedom, that autonomy, the choice. Um, I think that's something that really like triggers that disgust mechanism inside of the
and
schizoid.
when they're spurred to engage because of that mechanism, were the environment stable and opening and understanding enough for them to articulate themselves and be understood and even received and worked with, that would foster a positive corrective experience. That
Yeah,
when they
yeah,
feel the need for that arise again, they will be even more inclined than they were before
yeah,
to want to
and then
engage.
also like developing the ability to realize that the reason you're so engaged with this is because there is an emotional trigger at play that is fair. It's you. It's healthy. It's good.
And then you get into the next part where you have to try and differentiate people from perceptions, which is probably one of the hardest things about a schizoid because
Mm.
baby with the bathwater logic.
You know, all they got is their perceptions. Just you know.
But as we just said, the fact that we can even assign this as an issue to work on means it's an issue that can be tackled, right? It's
And
not an
tackling those it well, yeah, and tackling those issues is what opens new doors as to how to further approach more, the more nitty gritty and complex, uh, you know, specific things for the specific
correct.
individual. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You see
That's
how the
yeah,
ball gets rolling once
yeah,
you add in a bunch of puzzle pieces.
yeah, yeah. It's because like yeah, the process of discovery is yet to have occurred because that hasn't really happened, right? On a larger scale, we haven't. these ideas have not been tested, and only by testing them and seeing the results can we determine or discover what the next steps could or might or should be or whatever. That's fine.
Like always, the hardest part is the first step.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, that first step requires me to get the attention of the right people because I can't implement that
Yeah,
step.
yeah, not
That
to
hence,
undermine the Herculean effort of that first step.
yeah. But it's just that's why like every day I live with like in the last 4 years, like in the last mostly 2 years, I would say since I've been like really like I've been living every day with the regret of not getting the right degree. Ugh. Like I really do. It's yeah, but it's frustrating because I if I had it, I would probably get taken more seriously by some of the people I attempt to communicate with. It's very frustrating because I know that had I done that, I have already the built-in resistances that would have that I used during going to school for history. Like I would have used those same like anti like narrative mainstaying of the field like parts I would have been applying that but to psychology instead of to history, and it would have been the field that I have far more of a passion for because like ultimately the reason I was interested in history was because I was in it was a vehicle in which I can connect to my species because it was just larger scale. Also makes sense why my favorite topic was historical theory, how the human mind interprets, deals
You
with.
don't really talk about history too much on your streams. I think I only recall one of them.
Yeah, I'm not. That's because this just not it. It. I thought it was the subject I wanted to do. It was not.
I don't know. It might be interesting to just share what you have gleaned, as well not let it go to waste.
There's nothing that I can tell you about historical events that you cannot already see on a variety of YouTube channels.
I don't know. Tell me about Angst's schizo ramblings about the Roman Empire or something.
No, I'm not.
I'd rather hear that
I.
from you than from the J-Rag video.
Uh, I'm not interested.
Fair
I'm
enough.
just not interested. Like I'm just not. Plus, I'd have to brush up again on my Roman history. I was more interested in modern history. I always saw modern history as something that's like well, when I say modern, I mean like 1800s and up. As like put it, it was always about trends for me. Like it was always about
Yeah.
like these like things that keep occurring and how they occur and how the how they react to this and how many times they happen and why they happen and what factors are at play for those instantiations to keep.
No wonder you're such a nihilist. You're a historian.
Hmm, it's all dark and it's all it's the grim dark. The real grim dark is a lot of
And
human
I'm
history.
sure it often repeats itself.
Mm, yeah. Uh, and sometimes it gets better and sometimes it gets worse. So yeah, it's um yeah, like it's just funny that like the emphasis like the stuff that I was so hyper fixated on, especially during my well, I had already been really interested, but during my like I don't know last 4 year, like 3 years of school or something. It was just like it was all social engineering stuff. It was all like propaganda stuff, and it's because like yeah, it was like essentially so involved with human psychology because it was literally the tool that was being implemented, especially after like especially after like the 1930s and stuff. They started like more
Um,
actively using like self-aware use of propaganda instead of just kind of like a more intuitive kind of propaganda or more philosophically constructed propaganda. It was a type of propaganda that was being constructed with psychological concepts as they were kind of evolving during that time in mind. Um,
you know
so,
what might be
well,
interesting?
hmm.
A sort of rendition of the Saturday streams where there's conversations about specific schizoid patterns you've noticed that are like underlying
Mm-hmm.
symptoms that create pathology,
Mm-hmm.
and like having open discussions
Who's going to show
on
up?
the server. Well, at
You?
least no, no, no. Having open discussions at least on the server,
Mm.
right? So using that as the basis for the question, and then you might be able to read some discourse back and forth where the people, you have some active people
Mm.
engaging with it, and then hopefully you have an environment that entices some other people to engage with, no, that represents me, or yes, I agree with that, or that sounds odd, but maybe if we move it this way,
Mm.
right? Kind of lean into the schizoids. Like, I don't want to just impose myself on other people to just make this like and rile up the schizoid
Mm.
for a reaction. That's not my point.
No, yeah, you know
But
what? You just
we
give
can
me
lean
a.
into it.
Yeah, no, you just gave me an idea. It's fine. You give me an idea. So this is the idea. So I already have a question, sort of, that I had in mind for this Wednesday, but this picture's funny on this thing, but sorry. Instead of just putting the question in like Inks News and then adding the schizoids and then being like, hey, submit it here, I'm gonna do that. It's still gonna happen because that's the only way I can get like consent, in my opinion, to be able to say what they felt. Like I
Yeah.
can't really like look just throw conversations and then just be like, hey, I'm gonna start. This person said this verbatim and all this sort of stuff. I could probably what I could do is I could probably put the same question in one part of the server in which like the questions part.
There's like an open forum.
Yeah, the questions port. No, but the questions portion, we have one. There's a channel
Yeah.
that's like just for questions,
Yeah.
and then
There you go.
people
Yeah.
can decide to make a thread and engage with it. And
Then you
well,
can gut it like you do with other books
yeah,
and
and then
create your
I
own
could read through
connections.
it and then see what points are being brought up, and then use those points as kind of like ways to sort of approach it or talk about it. I could even
Maybe a
I,
week's too short. Maybe at least 2 weeks
yeah,
for
maybe
something like that.
maybe I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll test it. But if I put the question there and I do read stuff and the engagements there, and even if it's only like 3 or 4 people on the server just having at it, um, I can at least talk about the types of stuff that was being discussed in that kind of area. I could be like, oh yeah, you know, this is the kind of back and forth I was seeing or interpreting from this, and then I would talk about that first, and then maybe like kind of quick, like at the beginning, and then I would go into the submissions, and that because then it reminds me of like kind of just like a you know what I mean? It's like more of like a thing, a more nebulous thing, and then it goes into the specific experiences that were submitted regarding the question.
Yeah, and you give people specific points to address and work on. And
Yeah.
also, it's well known in the schizoid literature that schizoids respond to feeling by proxy. So when you have some of the more active people
Hmm.
that engage with something, you might spark at least a singular comment from someone else.
Like a
And the
lurkers might.
more, yeah,
Yeah.
right, the
Even
more
even if they don't
potential comments
actually
you have, the more
comment,
sparks.
but even if they don't actually comment, but they just contemplate wanting to and then disregard it,
Or
that's still a
a
win.
simple emote.
A simple
Maybe they
emote.
agree with a comment, and without typing
Hmm.
anything, they do a thumbs up or something, or a thumbs
Hmm.
down.
Hmm. That's why I didn't do any today, but that's why I really like the poll system on YouTube a lot, because it doesn't show who voted for what. Like I can't see. It's kind of cool. So they're not really telling anything about themselves. I would just have to like you know assume, and I don't really pay attention, and I don't look at, to see who's on here. Like all I know technically that's watching possibly is Duck, Faxon, and Melee. I don't know who the other 7 people are. Probably some regulars. 6? Oh, it's
Well,
9? Okay. Never mind. My shit's saying 10. It's lying.
oh, okay, I have no idea.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. And then like what I'm more interested in is getting the people who watch these streams as VODs to comment in the comment section. I want more of that because that's going to be that they're the silent majority of the people that watch this stream. Because like, whoa, let me look really quick. What is it?
Yeah, like maybe you can make a poll and give the server some time to think, and then the people who see the poll some
Yeah,
time to think,
look at
and
this.
then they might come to the stream with questions or comments, and then or say it after the stream's over. Who knows?
Let me see here. Ooh, there was some division on that last one. Interesting. No, because like for example, the Tuesday stream, that if you met one schizoid, you've met one schizoid one. That one has I think at the time I had like maybe like 10 people watching, like the full way through. But then it says it has 193 views.
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of people that are just not watching it live. Which I understand because I don't generally watch my streams live, so I relate to that. Almost every stream I do watch is either sections that are chunked out, or if I do watch a full stream, it's like I wait till it's done and then I watch it the next day once it's uploaded. Especially if they're like 3 or 4 hours long. I don't like jumping into the middle of a stream. I want all the context of how it led up there. So I generally just kind of like, and I don't like the idea that I can't pause and play because like I have other shit I have to do. So to me, it's pointless to listen to a stream live. Um, so I'm guessing a lot of the people that do listen to me, that chunk, that's why maybe. Uh, and the issue with like comments on on a video is that they stay there, right? I think the reason
Yeah.
a lot of the people that do chat during the streams don't leave comments because like comments feel more permanent. Um,
I mean, they can always delete it.
yeah, they could delete it. I mean, I'd appreciate if like you do if you want to leave a comment and then later delete it, leave that comment and then leave it up for like at least 2 days so I could just see it and then delete it.
Maybe sit on the emotion too. You know,
Maybe I don't know
who
if
knows?
that's what the concern is about the permanence of it being there, or that whatever. Um, but yeah, like I want to hear from the 100 plus people that just watch us later. Like it's crazy. Like that stream has 193 views. There's 2 comments, but there's 13 likes, which is weird. Um, and there's some downvotes too, because according to this, even though it had 13 lights, it was only 86.7 dislike to like, so that means there was at least 2 dislikes. Now, I want to know what they disliked about it. Just as much as I want to know what they liked about it. Because then that's engagement as far as like I can get information as to their perception of what is being said by my ignorant ass. Um, yeah, last Saturday is 160. I see some with 150, 200. Some hit like 200. Yeah, a couple hit 200. Maybe it's the title. I don't know. But it's really funny because like I'm seeing like 200, but I'm seeing 2 comments, 1 comment. Like if I go down the list, it's just like 0, 1, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, 2, 3. That will big day. 0, 0, 0, 2, 0, 0. That's funny.
Here's the part where you have to say something not wrong, but really, really close, right? Just enough to hit the mark where someone be like, I want to fix that. And I feel
Yeah,
like
but
I could fix that if I spoke up.
I can't manufacture that.
No.
That'd be
Only you
that
could.
would be disingenuous, and I don't do that kind of shit. So
Well, you could manufacture it in a genuine way.
no, I would have to like no, I couldn't just be like just say something kind of wrong or incorrect just to get people to no, that's stupid. I can never do that.
I'm saying that we could appropriate the concept and make it genuine.
I don't know how you could.
I don't
How
know.
would
I
you
figured it out though.
genuinely like create like strategically create something like that? Like I guess like your intent could
I
be
mean,
genuine to like but you're still kind of tricking people.
I could say bluntly, this is what I'm doing, and I'm hoping I get a response if I do it like this because I genuinely don't know of a better way to do it, although I know it's a bit contrived for my
Yeah, you
liking,
already lost them I think at that
right?
point.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Like I just have to. Well, how about this? Like, should I take it as a good sign that people are watching the streams and not? I'm not saying anything that makes them want to fix it too much, so they don't
I
leave
think that's too
comments.
much overthinking for me.
It's like maybe they're not leaving comments because they agree.
No, that's too much
No,
overthinking.
yeah, that's probably not it. I mean, well, because they could be just as much not leaving comments because they disagree. So
They could just,
not
find this space not as awful as other spaces, so this is how they fill the void. Feel like that's a pretty my opinion, I
yeah,
feel like that would be a very popular
yeah, probably.
thing schizoids do.
Yeah, I do that all the time. So um,
I hate that shit. I'm so restless. I can't stand it anymore. I'm like I want to bash my head against the wall. I need to do something. I'm getting claustrophobic.
it's funny.
It's one of those turning points in my life again, I guess.
Hey, Gator Dog. Sorry, bro, you just joined at the end, but it's gonna get uploaded if you want to watch it. I think it was an interesting one, so I recommend. Um, in any case, all right. According to the stats here, yep, 10 people watching, total of 25 views. So yeah, that means that like 100 plus watches after, and pretty regularly. Pretty regularly. There's at least like I don't know. I would say there's at least 100 people that regularly watch my streams after
I don't
because
know.
of
I find people generally are willing to have conversations with me, and I have a lot to speak. So I you just need me on your streams more, Angst. I can do everything.
oh yeah.
Just leave it all to me.
And
Leave it
fortunately,
all.
you're I think you wouldn't appeal to the more schizoid ones too much.
Now, once I get my schizo riz up,
Oh,
I
yeah, your
will.
Riz, the schizo Riz. All right, guys.
I'm already so exhausted. No way I can do that.
Yeah, I know. And tell, and I appreciate the effort. In any case, thanks a lot, guys, for showing up as usual. Thanks, Shadow, for showing up today. Um, Thanks for the comments, the people that did leave some comments. And also remember, if you like the streams, blah blah blah, please Patreon would be super helpful. It's been a shit fucking last month and a half for me financially, so any help's always appreciated. Um, and yeah, there's also coffee and PayPal, whatever works for you. I don't know. Oh yeah, like, subscribe, and if you don't have money, just throw the links to my streams. If I say something, like timestamp it, like YouTube lets you, and then be like, oh look, Schizoid Reddit or whatever. Or
If you don't have money, throw rocks in his windows. He likes that too.
yeah, that's super cool. It's my favorite. Letting all the cold in, so good. It's
But you
called.
get these really cool rocks.
Oh, I know. And when the
Really
sun
cool
goes up,
rocks.
all this cool light just comes through just right.
Dude, I love cool rocks.
Yeah, it's so cool. Cool rocks. I get to collect cool rocks.
I have a collection of cool rocks.
Of course you do. You're autistic. Because there's like it's called it's pebbling. Like it's a joke, but it's actually like
it's
a thing.
pebbling?
Yeah, it's called pebbling.
That's the first I've heard of
It's a
it.
joke. No, but
no. You know more about autism culture.
No. But okay, let me explain. It doesn't really mean you collect rocks, right? But the reason it's called pebbling, is because it's like one of they call it like an autistic love language, which is it's when
Little guys.
well, it's when they get like stupid little things that remind them of someone, and then they give that thing to the person. And so then it's like that's a form of displaying affection that's like more intuitive to a lot of autists. It'll just be like, oh, it doesn't even have to be a physical thing. It could just be like a meme. It could be uh, a physical object, obviously, or an article to something that like it's like, oh, I was thinking of you. Here's the thing, and that's like a form. Yeah, the term I think is pebbling, because it's like you give people little pebbles. Like I found this. It's kind of like the equivalent of like
That's hilarious.
of a child, like
Really
it's kind of like a child like picking up, like finding a really cool looking rock and then taking it to their friend, be like, I found this cool rock, I want to give it to you. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah,
That just made my.
I found this cool rock. I think you'll like it. Here, take it. Thank you for the rock.
Here's this thing.
They
I
leave.
picked up from the trash.
Yeah,
think
but
you'll like it.
I
There
think
you go.
this is cool. I found it on the ground. I have no need for it, but I think you might. And then that's like, yeah, it's like a
Okay, bye now.
bye. Yeah, exactly. Bye. Yeah. And so there's like something like they feel nice about giving it to them, and the person hopefully enjoys receiving it, and then that's it. Like that's good. Something good happened, and if a thing found use. This little rock I found has a purpose now. Here's the little rock. So yeah, it's kind of like that. I think yeah. I don't know if it's obviously it's not just an autistic exclusive thing, but I guess it's like very common. But that's why when you said rocks, my stupid brain went rocks, pebbles, pebbling, autism. So, but actually collecting rocks, I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised.
There's a few people I know that are autistic.
Collect rocks. Yeah, collecting. Might be a tactile thing. Like if a rock feels good, looks good, like feels right.
No, it's funny colors.
Funny colors. Oh, that's a sensory thing. Visual.
Yeah,
Visually.
funny colors.
Oh, look at this funny shape and colors. I like the shapes and the colors. And then there goes in the rock pile.
It's like someone jingling the baby keys in front of me. Ooh.
Look at the little rock. It's got little twists and turns and colors. Stick it on the pile. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny shit. All right. All right. Peace out, guys. And as usual, when day's dark, always remember, happy day. Oh, and watch that video that I did with all neurotypes. All neurotypes. I posted it on my posts on the YouTube channel, like on my posts or whatever, and I posted it on the server. Watch it, or just put it on in the background, because I'm going to be saying a bunch of stuff you probably already heard, but to a person that's asking me questions. So if that's boring, just like mute it and just have it play, so that way that helps their channel, because they have a cool channel and there's a lot of cool videos on there. All Neurotypes Office or All Neurotypes. It's all one word. But yeah, they have a lot of cool stuff. They talked to another schizoid before me, and they talked to schizotypal people, schizophrenic people, all kinds of shit. They're a very cool person. Anyway, that was my shilling that. Please check it out. Um, if anything here, I'll put it just in case you're too lazy to go look for it wherever I put it. Here, I'll just do this. There we go. God damn. That's crazy. That's hilarious. I didn't even notice. I just looked right now. I that would be crazy because I don't even have a single video that's like that. The video they put out where they talk to a schizoid, it's an interview on living with schizoid personality disorder. That one already has 17,000 views.
Who?
What do you mean who?
The video they put out. Are you talking about the person?
Yeah,
Neurotype's
all
person?
Neurotype's office. Yeah, they put out
Oh.
the video 10 months ago with like interviewing a schizoid. That one has 17,000 views. Um, Mine that was put out 2 days ago only has 145. But yeah, anything's good. More info. But who knows?
An hour-long video about schizoid personality? That might get some hits.
Well,
It's
apparent
usually the
that
longer
mine
ones
is an
that get
hour
hits.
long video about schizoid personality.
Yeah, but
So
you're a schizo that rambles.
yeah, nobody likes that.
Also, when did you do that?
A
The
couple
one you
of,
just mentioned.
a couple of days ago. The
Oh,
video came out like 2 days ago. A couple days before that, they had interviewed me. The questions were cool, and I had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, check it out. That's wild. Wow, you know what? You know what? I actually had a theory. I think I mentioned it to them. Was that a subject like schizoid or something like that? Like their audience is that like their audience is small but very dedicated, and I think that's because well because of the subject matter and because of themselves. I think a lot of their the audience is kind of more on the autistic side. So
why? Why can't there just be just an average gradient of people? Why is it always
because
autists?
because because average people are not going to sit down and watch an hour long interview with a schizoid.
You're so right, but it's still annoying.
The people that are going to watch it are the schizoids or autists that just watch that channel
It's
because they
even more
like
annoying
that channel.
on it's even more annoying on a meta level that I'm frustrated that there's too many autists.
No.
That alone is something
Oh.
that frustrates me.
Oh. Oh. You're going to become a self hating autist? That's funny.
No,
I'm
too
kidding.
many autists in the schizoid sphere.
Mm, I would say what I would say is there's the ones that engage more are probably going to be on the autistic side often more than less. I would say
See, this is my
maybe a lot of the ones that do engage are like on the autistic ADHD side because um
maybe.
you know AU
This is me
ADHD.
spurging out about how my special interest is being
Oh, there's too many.
lessened.
There's too many autistic people into psychology like me.
No, there's
No.
too many autistic people in schizoid personality disorder, i.e., my special interest that's skewing with my data collection.
Oh, it's skewing. Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Peace out.